It's now my pleasure to call to the stage two guys. One is our Director for Big Data Solutions out of Redwood City, a guy called Rydz, and his partner in crime, I think that's a fair comment, Gab Gennai from Cloudera. Yes. They're going to have to talk to us today about Hadoop for data warehousing optimisation, and I'd like you to welcome to the stage, please.
Good morning. Who's from Melbourne? The best city in the world, apparently. That's where I come from, right? Most livable city in the world. So I'm from Cloudera. So welcome everybody. Who's heard of Cloudera? Show of hands. Who's using Cloudera? One person, and she's my marketing manager. Come on, guys. So we're here today to talk a little bit more about how Cloudera really fits into the world of Informatica and how we can help you. Because as everyone knows, and I think it's already been mentioned today, there is a tremendous growth in data. Data is really exploding today. So we're seeing it from the popularization, I suppose, of social media. So and what are the traditional challenges that we're facing in the data warehouse, especially today? So as data volumes increase, right, so do the complexities around this data and business analysis. So what we're seeing ETL and ETL processes coming under strain, right? So so what are some of the issues? So one of the biggest issues is scalability. So scalability always seems to be an issue when it comes to data warehouses because we can only monitor or run business intelligence across a very small window of data. And there's also the issue about cost over performance because traditional data warehouses do cost quite a considerable amount of money compared to relational databases, but we can't really process a lot of business intelligence in those databases. And what occurs is some slow processes. CPU rises, okay? So this is a common problem. And because we can't get all that data into our data warehouses, we do miss opportunities. So people go without these business intelligence reports, or it could be slow. It could take 6 months before they get a report out. And this is a common problem. In 6 months' time, the data is old. So we go back to the start again. And data is incomplete. We keep data for too long in, some old data marts perhaps. Copies are made, they're modified. It's not the right data that we want, so we go back to the start again. And obviously, we run out of capacity. Our data warehouses, as strained as it is, we run out of capacity. We need to get more. This is a common thread that we're hearing. And then IT is put under constant constraints. We need more data warehousing. We need to buy additional information, additional capacity, and so on and so forth. So when you want to run that use case that's specific to your business, you can't. Or you have to wait too long to actually get it run. So there's no real room to innovate. So how can we help you? Or what can we do to change that? So at Cloudera, the Enterprise Data Hub complements the data warehouse. It doesn't replace it, it complements it. And how do we do this? Number one, we load all data. Doesn't matter what shape or size it is, structured and unstructured data. We load it into data warehouse where and when it's needed. One thing I keep on hearing also is, big data. I want to change that a little bit. I want to say all data because really it's not just big data, it's also small data. So it's all about all data. Number two is we can now empower the business analyst to run queries not only in the traditional data warehouse, but also inside of Cloudera or inside the enterprise data hub, because we keep that data there. It's prior to it being transformed, or we can use the transformed information as well. So we're giving them more scope to actually analyze the data across a longer period of time. That time window now is expanded quite considerably. We're not constrained to the limited information that we can contain in our enterprise data warehouse. So we're avoiding the silo effect. You know, we're avoiding information that lives in silos. Bring it all into the data warehouse. It's there to capture all your information in one single repository, one single place. And this gives us a complete 360-degree view of what's most important to us, and that is our data, which contains customer information, product information, and so on and so forth. And finally, it's cost effective, it's highly scalable, and it's really ready, it's enterprise ready for your environments, for all data, for all users. So recently we were added, or Cloudera was added to the Gartner Magic Quadrant for data warehousing. Now that's a first for us, but I want to make a point. We are going up in the right direction, but we're there to complement the data warehouse, not to replace it.
Being in the Magic Quadrant's nothing new for Informatica. I think we've already shown you a handful of those today, but we are proud to have moved in front of IBM in both the ability to execute and completeness of vision with the 2014 Magic Quadrant. And a lot of that has to do with our thought leadership around big data and some of the things we're doing to complement Hadoop technologies like what Cloudera offers. So maybe I will need that click. Oh, back. So we have a handful of joint customers. I wanted to put up a slide that kind of illustrates who some of those customers are. The one that I would drill into is the S&P 500 software company. That's Intuit. They presented at Informatica World in May. They're the makers of TurboTax software that helps a lot of us in the States do all of our taxes, and certainly over the last 5-10 years, they've accumulated a lot of data. So what they did is they put all of that in one place, and while they're calling it an analytics cloud, it's essentially a data lake or a data reservoir, an enterprise data hub. We hear a lot of different terms for the same type of big data architectural pattern, which is we're going to use a technology like Hadoop to store all of our data so that our analysts can access a complete set of information at any given point in time without having to go through the data warehouse development cycle of getting each different attribute added to the data warehouse. But while I could speak all day on different Informatica and Cloudera customers, I think it makes sense to hear directly from a joint Informatica and Cloudera customer. So this is a video from Western Union. Sanjay. We're going to hear him talk real soon. It's going to be great.
How you going? This worked during rehearsals.
Moving money for better. It's really how we connect our customers globally. Western Union has been around for a long time, and the foundational principle that the company is built on is really connecting our customers. Passing money from the sender to the receiver is the core element in how we move money cross-border. But at the end of the day, it's really connecting that sender and receiver and building relationships. That immigrant who's working hard day in, day out is sending money back home for very critical functions like sending their kids to school, taking care of their parents, or paying for their home mortgages.
Western Union is in 200 different countries and territories. We are in brick and mortar retail locations. We are in post offices. We are in banks.
Clearly, as we see the global economic changes that are happening, the uptick of internet technologies, mobile technologies, our customer expectations and our customer needs are evolving and changing. And also the immigrant population that is moving into different countries, their next generation is becoming a lot more tech savvy. How do we really drive that omni-channel experience so our customers don't see us as two different entities, retail or mobile? Customer centricity is something that's really something that is built into our DNA. Over the past 1 year, we made a huge investment in starting to look at data technologies and how we'd use data to drive better decisions and deliver better customer experience. Let me give you a perspective on the scale of data that we manage here at Western Union. It's about 700 million transactions. And when you multiply how many send countries and how many receive countries we have, and in various different geographies, the numbers just start to add up and they become really, really big.
We wanted to unlock the information that is in bits and bytes of data. We wanted to be able to intelligently decide on how and what to offer to our customers. The data was speaking to us, we just needed to react to it.
We implemented a Hadoop ecosystem. Informatica played a pretty critical role. In 5 months, we were going from zero to Hadoop with massively rich data.
Immediately we saw results in how we could protect our customers from scams or fraud and keep the information compliant. We want to make all their lives easier, faster, better, using tools that we have at our hand, like big data, to enable us to get to that vision of customer centricity, a true customer centricity.
I feel good to come to work every day and think about the fact that every effort that I do or my team puts in is going to make a difference in people's lives.
So I'll let you guys kind of read this over my shoulder as I want to tell you another story of another Informatica customer. They didn't publicly present, so I'll just tell you that they're a manufacturer of video games, and so that's the business they're in. Very profitable business for those that are leaders in that field. And what was happening is that they were getting a new terabyte of data. When you play their video games, everything you do goes back to that company. The characters you select, the levels you're on, the games you're playing, and things like that, which is very important information for them to have. They're starting to put marketing in video games. So they want to know the effectiveness of what's happening with their players who are their end consumers. I think just about every company wants to know what their end consumers and end customers are doing with their product. So at any rate, all of the data from you playing a video game goes back to this organization. And in October of 2012, they were getting a new terabyte of data every 30 days. By March of 2013, so less than 6 months later, they were getting a new terabyte of data every 10 days. So we're talking about explosive data volume growth. And it just didn't make sense for them to continue putting these terabytes of data into a technology like Oracle Exadata. I don't know if they're Exadata or Teradata or Netezza. These are great technologies that have their place. But at $50,000, $70,000 a terabyte, it didn't make sense to put all of this new data in those technologies. It made sense to put this raw data in a technology like Hadoop because now it's $1,000 a terabyte. You know, we're not talking about saving 10 or 20% here. We're talking about saving 98% of your data storage and processing costs. So they started putting that data there. And what ends up happening, and we're going to talk through the architecture of doing data warehouse optimization, but this is a great example because what they're doing is they're putting the raw staging data in Hadoop. So if Jeff Rydz plays a video game and I select a female character wearing red 98 times out of 100, and you process those 100 character selections, you can reasonably conclude that I like female characters wearing red. And this may be important for marketing campaigns or building new games or whatever the case may be. But if you think about that, there's one piece of information, Jeff Rydz likes this, and there's 100 raw data selections, right? You don't need to put the 100 raw data selections in very expensive storage and processing like our database appliances. You put that raw staging data in something like Hadoop. You use the distributed processing that Cloudera Hadoop gives you to process that and create information. Jeff Rydz likes this. And then that one single record that I like something goes back in the data warehouse as high value information where all of your business analysts can access it and use it just like they always have. And what we've essentially done with this process is decrease the amount of time it takes to process the data to create the information, and we've driven down the cost, so now we're more cost effectively doing our data warehouse processing even though the end results are still the same. Our high-value information is still in our data warehouse appliance. So how this ultimately works, what we'd recommend here is identifying unused data and data that is ripe for offloading from a very expensive platform. A partner of Informatica's called Appfluent did an analysis of a large retailer's data warehouse, and they found that the database appliance, I don't remember if it was Teradata or Netezza or Exadata, whatever the case may be, but they were storing all of their data there for their data warehousing and their business intelligence, and they found that they were using that platform, 55% of that platform's CPU capacity was being used to do ETL and ELT type work. Now, I'm not going to disparage any of those technologies because they're very good at that and very good at doing the joins and the aggregates and the sorts and everything else that we need to do with our data. I would, however, argue that it's not cost effective, right? So, great example of work that should be offloaded from those expensive technologies to cheaper and more cost-effective and efficient technologies like Hadoop. In that same study, they found that 70% of the data in the data warehouse wasn't even being used. And this is okay. It's okay to have data that's not being used because it may one day become relevant, right? If you capture information that I tweeted, I love my favorite sports team, that may not matter to your company now. But 3 years from now, when your company wants to do a joint marketing campaign with that sports team, all of a sudden, that information is incredibly relevant. So even if the data is not being accessed today, it is important to keep that data. And that's why we have technologies like Cloudera Hadoop to help us keep that data that's not being used today, but may have value in the future at a very cost-effective rate. So we want to offload both that data and that processing to Hadoop. We want to take our new raw data storage. We want to move that to Hadoop. And then we want to do our parsing. This is where we might build our slowly changing dimensions. This is where we might format the data. This is where we're going to integrate our data sets. We're going to apply our data quality if we need to protect any sensitive data. We're going to bring all of our data together and really take that raw data and turn it into information that has value to the business. And then we're going to go ahead and do a couple different things with it. One is we could execute real-time interactive queries. Cloudera gives us SQL on Hadoop through Impala for that. Or we can load those results right back in the data warehouse. Remember what Gab said earlier. Cloudera Hadoop does not replace your data warehouse, it augments your data warehouse. Think back to that example about the video games, how the raw data and the processing of the data to create information is being moved to Hadoop. We're not replacing the need for that data warehouse appliance. So how Informatica helps with this is that, one, we have Informatica Vibe data stream for machine data. This is built on Informatica's messaging technology. This gives you the ability to take any sort of machine data, whether they are log files like server logs and web logs and firewall logs, mobile device data, sensor data, any of this machine data, and be able to stream that into Hadoop in real time. And the reason we do this in real time is to lower our overall infrastructure costs rather than trying to do a giant batch at the end of the evening. Informatica has load capabilities into Hadoop. This is through our Power Exchange branding for connectivity. Just like Informatica can connect to Oracle and SAP and Salesforce.com, we can connect to something like a Cloudera Hadoop so you can get your data in and out and integrate your data throughout the enterprise. Our big data edition is Informatica's largest value proposition in this area. Informatica technologies, the entire Informatica platform, from data parsing, which helps you address different data formats, data integration, which allows you to do traditional ETL type activities to integrate disparate data sets, data quality, fuzzy matching, natural language processing, profiling. All of these capabilities will now run as MapReduce on Hadoop, so that none of your development staff have to learn any of the new programming languages associated with this wonderful technology that's going to drive down costs within your IT infrastructure and accelerate the time it takes to actually do the data processing and create the information from the data. And then, of course, the Power Exchange is bidirectional there. And then, Gab, did you want to talk about some of the Cloudera capabilities that come into play here?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. So, you know, we're talking about the Enterprise Data Hub, and it really is a repository for storing all your data in full fidelity. So when we're talking about all data, we're talking about, you know, structured data, unstructured data, bitmap files, tweets, social media, you name it. It comes all together quite nicely inside of our data stack. So it's built on open source. We are totally 100% open source throughout all our data processing. So the Enterprise Data Hub is 100% open source. And around that, we actually wrap a management layer around it to enable you to install Cloudera and the Enterprise Data Hub and all of its Hadoop components with ease, right? On top of that, we also allow for governance of that data and also security around that data. So we now provide Kerberos authentication and LDAP authentication via Kerberos to the Enterprise Data Hub. On top of that, what's really important and what we've found to be extremely important for a lot of our corporate customers is security, or particularly encryption. So now we encrypt the data at rest and also encrypt the data in motion, which is very, very important for us. So getting back to the Enterprise Data Hub, it's really, as I mentioned, a repository for all information, and we allow for workflows to access that data in a variety of ways. For example, batch processing using MapReduce. So if you have large processes that you want to do in batch, you would use something like MapReduce to do that. Or analytical SQL, like Jeff mentioned, Impala allows you for that direct access into the Hadoop data store. You know, we're talking about speed of processing, fast processing inside of Hadoop. We'll talk a little bit about those two products just a little bit later on as well. We have a fast search engine, right? We also do advanced analytics inside of Hadoop. So quick ways to do machine learning. And obviously stream processing now with Spark, which is a new initiative out of Berkeley. But one of the key components to these workloads is also enabling third parties to access our data. Informatica, for example, is one of these. And there's several others out there as well. So from a standpoint of view, Hadoop and the Enterprise Data Hub is 10 to 100 times cheaper to store data inside the Data Hub. That's phenomenal. You know, so if you've got costs issues, this is the place to store it. We can also scale because we scale on industry standard hardware. Okay? Commodity hardware as well, depending on the sensitivity of your data, I suppose. So a couple of important factors there to understand. And it's one place to process data. Full agility you've got your business analysts that can understand SQL, can interrogate that data store. So it's important to do that. Okay, so the Enterprise Data Hub has become the standard for enterprises across the globe. Jeff?
So just to echo kind of what I said earlier, Informatica has the ability to access any type of data, whether that's your application data in SAP or Oracle eBiz or PeopleSoft or any of those sorts of applications, cloud data stores like Salesforce.com, obviously relational databases in Oracle and SQL Server and Teradata and Netezza, as well as mainframe type of connectivity. So brief kind of example of Informatica connectivity, and the reason that this is important is these are all of the different types of data sets that we will be able to help you integrate and ingest into Cloudera Hadoop so that you can have one place to manage all of your data and give people access to integrated data sets. Just to kind of repeat here, Informatica's value proposition within the big data space is that Informatica developers are now Hadoop developers. Anyone who knows how to use Informatica and use our pre-built transformations for manipulating and preparing data can now do that work on Hadoop. Informatica will take care of running our platform as MapReduce to leverage the distributed processing power of Cloudera without your developers having to know anything about this technology. And the reason that that's so important is you get up to 5x developer productivity. What happens we worked with one of the large banks in the US, and it took their pig developer 4 weeks to develop something that we did in 4 days. With one of the large investment banks, it took their pig developer 3 weeks to develop something we did in 3 days. And while everyone gets very, very excited about lowering development costs, which is exciting, the true value here is that you're getting these projects out the door in 2 to 3 months and not 10 to 15 months. When the business decides this is the type of initiative that I'm going to do to capture market share from my competitor, the business cannot wait a year and a half for that to be implemented. That's got to be done in a quarter so that we can measure the effectiveness of that project and determine whether or not that's going to help with the overall business revenue goals, market share goals, and overall cost structure. So getting these projects done quickly is incredibly important, and Informatica offers a visual development environment for working with your data on Hadoop that allows you to preview the data results at any step along the way, and that's how we're getting that wonderful 5x developer productivity. Informatica Big Data Edition also fits into Cloudera Manager. So we're working very closely. We do a lot of joint development with Cloudera. So coming soon, later this year, we will be integrated with Cloudera Manager, which will help you deploy and monitor what's happening in the Informatica Big Data Edition.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, so just Jeff touched on our integration, or Informatica's integration, and 2 companies collaborating. There's a lot going on. Definitely at corporate level. But Cloudera Manager is a tool that allows you to quickly and easily deploy Cloudera and all of its components inside your organizations. It was built to alleviate all the issues that someone may have by installing separate components and looking at dependencies and different versions of operating systems and so on and so forth. So some of the key areas that we'd like to say we have lots of strengths in, and the first is to deploy. So deploying your clusters inside of your environments becomes quite easy with Cloudera Manager. We basically automate it all for you. It's very, very quick to deploy and install. On top of that, we allow you to do discovery of your clusters and look at the health of your clusters, making sure they're optimized and they are running correctly. And if you do have faults in your clusters, we enable you to do diagnosis of those clusters by using reports or heat charts and knowing where those problems are. So it's important to understand that it's a full encapsulated tool set. And once you do diagnose those problems, we allow you to act on those problems, in enabling you to fix those problem areas. On top of that, we also give you the option to send out this information to third-party applications to ensure that everything or all your SLAs are met quite nicely. The tool that Jeff was mentioning before was Impala. And Impala is our interactive SQL toolset that runs inside of Cloudera, right? It's designed to reduce that MapReduce overhead, okay? Because MapReduce was taking time to run jobs inside of Hadoop. So Impala was created for that very purpose. It's a full SQL 92 standard. It gives you the ability to run the creates, the inserts, the selects, the joins, and so on. I think I left one out. Anyway, so it is optimized for your low latency searches, okay? So the quicker you can ask that question, the quicker it's going to get you a result back. We've found that the speed in which we can process information in Impala over MapReduce can be anywhere between 4 to 100 times faster. And we've seen this over and over again throughout our customers, especially in the United States. Jeff.
Sure, both Cloudera and Informatica have teamed up to try and create some data governance around this ecosystem that you can put together for your data, this very cost-effective ecosystem that we're calling the Cloudera Enterprise Data Hub. So I'd like to kind of skip through this, and we'll talk about each of the two components about that. First, from the Cloudera standpoint.
Yeah, so Cloudera and Navigator. This is where the data governance comes in. This is our tool set to provide data governance across your entire Hadoop stack. It tells you who's using the data, where they're using the data, across what data sets, or across what clusters. So it tracks all of that information for you. It's doing data lineage for you. So that's really, really important. It gives you the ability to audit this information as well, provide information for your governance purposes across over to your internal folks, or perhaps even to your auditors. It gives you an audit dashboard, and it actually provides information that it collects. It gives you the ability to send it to third-party applications again, or perhaps even your SIEM environments, where security information event management is really important key to this, to find out who does what, where, when, and how. It answers those type of questions. And we're in version 2. There are some new features coming out in October, which I can't actually release right now, but yeah, so there you go.
So Informatica Metadata Manager and Business Glossary has been functionality that's been enabling customers for a long time now to better manage their data environment. And now this has applicability to the Hadoop ecosystem as well, because when you load data into Hadoop with Informatica, when you process data on Hadoop with Informatica, when you source those gold nuggets of information that you have found from your raw data and move them back in your data warehouse, Informatica Metadata Manager can give you end-to-end lineage of where that data came from, how it was transformed as it moved through Hadoop, and where it eventually resided. And in fact, if you're going to put reports from something like a Cognos or a Business Objects or a MicroStrategy on top of the eventual data in the data warehouse, we'll grab that metadata as well, so that you can actually trace a data element on a report back through the entire data flow through the organization, including on Hadoop. Coming later this year, we will be integrating with Cloudera Navigator. So all of the functionality that Gab just described that is being captured by Cloudera within Navigator will be able to be imported into the Informatica Metadata Manager repository. So now you're not just getting the data lineage, you're also getting all of that metadata that's being created within the Hadoop environment. With our business glossary functionality, you can now add business definitions to the technical metadata. So when a report says revenue, or a report or a field has the name cost, what does that actually mean? What relevance does that have to the business? So we've actually combined our metadata manager and business glossary functionality with what Cloudera has done with Navigator to give you end-to-end metadata and governance throughout your Hadoop environment. So if we talk about overall benefits here, the chief benefit that Informatica is bringing to the table is to enable the easy adoption or the faster adoption of a new technology like Cloudera Hadoop. You don't need to learn new programming languages like Pig, Hive, or MapReduce. You don't need to struggle to get your data in or out of this new technology. In the Informatica platform that many of your developers already know today is applicable for working with the new Hadoop environment.
Yeah, so just to add to that, Jeff, it really is one place to store, all your data, whether it's mainframe data, sensor data, social media data, any type of data. It's one place. It's got to be cool, right? You can interrogate that data really quickly and really easily. You can store the information cheaply for a longer period of time. Because what you want to do, you want to get that time value window available to run those queries across an extended time frame. Don't archive your data to tape, because once it's to tape, it's lost. I doubt that you'll ever get that back. The tape's destroyed, the tape backup system's no longer in use, and so forth. So keep your data inside of Hadoop, gives you that wider window in which you can search your information. I think I've said it's cheap. And we're not replacing the data warehouse. It's to really complement the data warehouses that you have, okay?
So we've got a couple minutes left before morning tea, and before I kind of close here, I just wanted to give you a couple more very quick stories about the value of storing data for a long period of time. It was one of the credit card companies, and what they were doing is they did some fraud analytics, and they were looking at 30 days worth of data, looking for any potential fraudulent activity with their credit card. And what they found was that the criminals had gotten smarter than their fraud analytics, because the criminals were stealing credit cards and making small purchases spread out over a long period of time that their fraud analytics just weren't set up to capture. And when they started leveraging Hadoop, rather than looking at 30 days worth of data, they started looking at something like 30 months worth of data. And it was the same analytics, but they were able to uncover this massive fraud conspiracy, because now they're looking at 30 months worth of data rather than just this narrow focus of 30 days worth of data. So being able to have more data and keep that data longer has tremendous value to the business and what the business is trying to do. Another example, one of the energy companies on the US West Coast was, they put in smart meters, right, so they could understand energy usage from their customers. And there's a lot of wasted energy, because the utilities have to store enough energy to meet peak demand, but energy doesn't store very well. So they've got a lot of energy that goes to waste. And they were trying to predict customer usage. So let me ask you this. If you're trying to predict my November energy usage, does it really make sense to look at what I did in October, September, and August of the same year, or does it make sense to look at November the year before, November 2 years before, and November 3 years before, right? Because our behaviors as people are cyclical, right? It depends on the seasons and school and kids and everything else, right? But it wasn't cost effective for them to use their traditional data warehouse technology to keep 3 years worth of data. They struggled just to keep up with the 3 months worth of data. So there is value in keeping this data longer, even if it doesn't look like it's necessarily relevant today. So next steps, and then we'll let everyone get to morning tea. We do have Cloudera and Informatica co-wrote a data warehouse optimization white paper that describes the reference architecture for doing the type of use case that we've just discussed. You don't even need to download that. We've included that in your take-home materials. There is training. There's training available. Informatica and Cloudera co-developed a joint training course. Free coupon for you guys to use. All of our attendees here today get access to free training. That's included in all of your take-home materials as well. You can download our Big Data Edition trial. This is a virtual machine that includes Informatica Big Data Edition software and Cloudera software on one virtual machine, along with some guided tutorials to kind of take you through how you would use these two technologies together to solve some of your data problems. And lastly, Informatica has the ability that if you are interested in investing in Hadoop, or you've already invested in Hadoop and are thinking of investing in Informatica technologies, that we have a ROI calculator. We can help you justify to your management why the investment needs to be made to set up these technologies and move forward with leveraging more cost-effective technologies for your data processing moving forward. With that, I invite Gary back up to the stage to kind of offer us some instructions for morning tea, I believe.
Thank you, Jeff. Can I put your hands together for Jeff and Gab, please? Thank you. Thanks very much.